All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Ames Public Library for Genealogy Plus, a program brought to you through a partnership with Ames Public Library and the Story County Genealogical Society. I'm Megan, I'm the Adult Services Manager here at Ames Public Library. The library's mission is to connect you to the world of ideas, and we invite you to join us for future programs, which you can learn about through our current issue of Page 1, which is on the table over there, or by signing up for our events email. Today's session is being recorded and will be posted to the Ames Public Library's YouTube channel after the program ends. For those of you joining us online, you will be muted during the presentation, so please submit any questions you have via the chat function, which you should find a link to at the bottom of your screen. I will be monitoring the chat to make sure those questions get shared at an appropriate time. If you get bumped out of today's event online, just follow the original link and you should be able to get right back in. And with that, please join me in welcoming our speaker.
Ooh, all right. Hello, good morning. Whoa. Bad thing about wandering in front of the screen is that the screen blinds you. So my name is Doug Jacobson. I'm a faculty member at Iowa State, and my area is cybersecurity. So today I want to give a talk about online safety. We're going to kind of wander all over the place with this because it's a big topic. Please feel free to ask questions anytime, or afterwards I'll hang around and try to answer any of your questions. So since this thing is in conjunction with the Story County Genealogical Society, I can never say that word. We're going to start. Sure we are. Okay. I hate computers. Let's see. Oh, no, we are not working. Oh, there we go. If you hit the buttons enough times with enough force, they happen. The world happens. So I got genealogy trees, right? It makes all, of course, my wife said, "Where'd you get those from?" My best friend, one of my best friends is AI. So this is AI's view of the history of the internet. And I kind of bring this up in part, the internet's not very old. What we think of the internet today is actually its birthday's coming up, October 29th, 1969. It was its birthday, is its birthday. And the history of the internet, therefore, is relatively new. And the internet, as most people, most lay people view, is really not until the mid to late 90s is when we started to get, since AI created that, it makes stuff up. So the words are a little made up. 1880, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know where he got that from. I told it to make a picture, and you can't edit the pictures when it makes them. So you just kind of have to take that with a grain of salt. Other than it's a pretty picture. And so the internet, when it was built, was never built, to even consider having like normal users. It was a research tool. It was a way for researchers to interact, and everybody who used it knew each other. So the concept of security was never baked into the idea of the internet. Nor was the idea that today estimates are of somewhere around 50 billion devices connected to the internet. Now this counts everything from your refrigerators to your cars to everything that connects to the internet. But we're talking about 50 billion things connected to something that was really only thought to handle in the order of maybe 1 million or 2 things. So again, security was never really baked into any of this. If we think about the other side of the equation, the security side of the equation, security kind of grew up along with the internet as far as the attackers are concerned. They realized fairly early on that they could do things, that they could use the internet for malicious activities. And so these activities kind of carried along in parallel with the internet as more users, more technology. They, of course, adapted and shifted. The first major attack on the internet was 1988. It took down 2/3 of the internet. That was a wake-up call, although it really didn't change how we did anything. But I put this kind of up to show you that, they've been working along the same times as the people building the internet. But there's a little bit of conflict, and or at least different viewpoints. The people building the internet, it's first to market, first to the cool thing. It's all about getting something out there to the user, and security is something we may or may not ever think about. The adversaries see this as a way to make money nowadays. And we'll get into that in a second. But it is very profitable to be a bad person on the internet. And so I'm not going to go into details in there, but to give you an idea that this evolves just like the internet evolves. Our adversaries are evolving, constantly changing. So again, kind of where we're at. I'll go into a little more detail, but it was a minimum of a $16 billion business in just the U.S. alone. That's how much money was taken, reported money taken in the United States last year. By my calculations, that's a lot of money. And what I'm going to focus on is sort of this two ways that we view security, two ways that we kind of approach it. And this is something that has also evolved as we get more users, so we get more people, and as our defenses change, they are more and more interacting directly with the victims. So we're seeing what we talk about as social engineering, and so that's what we're going to spend quite a bit of our time looking at. So every year the FBI puts out a annual report, kind of what happened last year in terms of complaints and losses. Now, this is only reported. A lot of people estimate that this is probably it's not quite double what really what really happens probably isn't double that, but it is significantly larger because not everybody reports what's going on. So we see a steady increase in losses. Complaints kind of ebb and flow because we get periods of time where we have things that are just massive amounts of money as far as losses are concerned. But you can see it's over $16 billion. This one we're going to recircle back on later, but they categorize it into all the different things that can happen. And I'm going to highlight at the end, or towards the end of the talk, we're going to go over several of these because these are where they're coming after you. Most of these items up here are against individuals. A few are more company-based. Business email compromise tends to be more business-based. That's about it. Most of them are against people. Ransomware tends to be a little more business-based. But most of the other ones are direct attacks, direct things against you and I. By age group, the older you are, the more likely you are to have something happen. They target, and we can't see the money piece there for over 64 billion, 4 point some, almost $5 billion. Now, loss, we're doing pretty good in Iowa, as far as loss per 100,000. I'm not gonna, I don't even want to speculate why the District of Columbia is, I don't know, anyway. But there's a breakdown, so, everybody is susceptible.
Doug,
Yes, I'm sorry.
is that because people over 60 aren't used to the computers and don't understand what they're seeing?
Yes, there's a lot of that. And we'll get into that, but there's issues of the the older you are, the less you've grown up with computers. When you look at, why do you rob a bank? Because that's where the money is. Why do you go after people over 60? Because that's where the wealth is. So they also target where the money, right, under 20, they don't got a lot of money. And so as we get down into the older ages, that's where the wealth is. And a lot of these scams are targeted towards where there's a lot of wealth. And also playing off the fact that computers aren't something we've all grown up with. Again, this is a trend of focusing on the over 60 specifically. And again, we've seen losses really go up. They've really honed in on some techniques to go after this demographic. At the end, we'll talk about some of those methods and techniques and some of the things to look out for. But kind of one of the big things we're going, I've been in cybersecurity since my first cybersecurity research grant was in 1991. So I've been in cybersecurity before this was even a thing. And we used to, people would always go, well, why? Why are all these adversaries out there? What are they trying to do? And for the longest time, it was not that profitable. But the biggest change we've seen is their ability to monetize. So that has increased the number of adversaries. We've also seen a shift to where they are more willing to interact with their victim. So that's been a shift over the last 5 years or so. They didn't used to, right? You just used to get a email, and they hoped you clicked on it. Now they're willing to send a simpler mail and start to send emails back and forth. They'll get on the phone. So they're willing to interact with their victim because, again, the payoff is potentially so great. So it's worth their time and effort to interact with potential victims. So I mentioned a little bit about, there's increase in attacks against the people. But if we think about dividing up cybersecurity, a lot of ways we can divide it up. But one of the ways we can divide it up is a couple of buckets as far as what we refer to as locks versus lies. And so locks are really focused around the technologies and the tools and the things you can do to try to protect your stuff. And we'll talk about that, but it's, things like updates and passwords and backups and encryption. All those things are stuff that you put in place to try to protect what you have. So you're locking stuff up. And we've gotten pretty good at a lot of this, locking up stuff, which is why they've shifted to what we refer to as the lies, the scams, the convincing you that you're going to do something, whether it's convincing you through fear, greed, opportunity, whatever it happens to be, they're going to try to convince you to do something. And that's where we see most of the money loss occurred. I'm not going to go back to this slide, but ransomware was way, way down on the list. But that's all you hear about in the news, right? Ransomware. And ransomware is horrible. And it hurts organizations. The Des Moines, talked to the Des Moines Public School District, who last year was shut down for a week. But overall, it's not a lot of money and it's a lot of work for the adversaries. Whereas if I can get online and I can convince somebody to even hand over $300 and it only takes me a couple minutes to convince them, right? I'm making $300 per 5 minutes. That's a decent salary. So again, we see a lot of shift towards this idea of social engineering, convincing you to do various things. So I want to talk some about the locks and kind of focus on the easy things, the low-hanging fruit that pretty much everybody can deploy and can work with, and will help make you safer. And so I'm going to go through those in more detail, but so we don't hear as much anymore, but we used to hear a whole lot about viruses and worms, and they categorize as malware. And that used to be the big thing we all worried about. Well, basically, every computing device that you have in your possession has software in the back end that's trying to protect you from that. And people often say, you know, should I have Norton, or should I have this one or that one? Doesn't matter, pick one. The one that comes with Windows for free works really well. Doesn't matter what you have, just have something. Because the little secret they're not all going to tell you is these things work by recognizing something that is out there, that's been out there. So they go in and look for characteristics, say, oh, this is a virus, this is this virus. But they all share that list of what every virus looks like. So every one of these malware companies has the same underlying list. So it doesn't matter what you use, but use something. So you get it from lots of places. And again, if your computer has this has this turned on, it'll stop it. Most of the time it'll stop it. Having said that, we're sometimes our own worst enemies. And it'll pop up and say, do you really want to do this? Yes or no. Do you really, really want to do this? Yes or no. If the computer ever asks you, do you really want to do this? Read what it's asking, because it's there to warn you that maybe you really don't want to do that. Now, sometimes it's okay, but you really have to think about it. And if it's saying, do you really want to go to this website? Maybe you should type that website in by hand versus the link. So listen to your computer. It's not there to annoy you. It's not that, well, sometimes it is. That tends to be more things like Office and Word and PowerPoint. They're there definitely to annoy you. So again, listen to what the computer is saying, and we'll talk a little bit more as we go on. This is why I don't like PowerPoint, because I get ahead of myself. We have the virus scanners, attachments. That used to be a big problem. Email attachments that were bad. Today, most of our email systems detect those and won't even let them be delivered to you. So our adversary has switched what they're doing. Today, their email attachments are not malicious. They're trying to trick you into doing something. It's an invoice that says, "Hey, I got your order for an Apple iPhone for $999.48 or whatever the number. It's something around that ballpark. And here's your invoice." And you're going, "I didn't order an iPhone." And then there's a place where you click, or there's a place where you call. And what they're after is to get a hold of your information, sometimes your bank account, because they say, "Oh, we'll reverse the charges. Just give us your bank account." Yeah, right. So they've shifted gears. We typically now don't see those attachments being what we used to think of as malicious, because our technology's gotten better. We'll get into more of this, but one of the really cool cool scams is the tech support scam. That, hey, I'm from Microsoft. We detected your computer has been hacked, and I'm here to help. Microsoft will never call you. And we'll get, but backups are another way to protect against if you happen to lose something. And we'll talk a little more about backups again. The other thing we hear a lot about is identity theft. And I have the word data breach in front of there, because when you think about you and what you have and what you represent in the world digitally, right? Your social security number is a representation of you, account numbers, address, date of birth, all of that is often stored by various organizations. You talk, Social Security and other places need that information. Banks need that information to verify you as a valid potential customer. So they have all this information. You have given it to them. So they're this what we call a data steward. But they sometimes lose that data. Lose is probably the wrong word. They get it stolen. And so I'm sure most of you have gotten some sort of, in the last 10, 15 years, some data breach notification, right? What is it, DMOS? If anybody's had orthopedic surgery down at DMOS, they got hit. Wolf-Eye Clinic got hit. Everybody gets hit. And so your data periodically gets stolen. They may depend on how good of a organization it is and how bad they think the breach is. They may offer you things like credit monitoring, et cetera. You'll get a letter from them. Take advantage of that. But one of the things, I have another slide about that in a second, is this idea of a credit lock. And we'll talk about that in more detail in a second. There are credit alerts that you can put on. And just monitor your accounts, right? That's just basic financial hygiene, right? Look and see where your charges are. Look at your credit score periodically, and just pay attention to what's going on. But one of the things that is offered is this ability to freeze your credit. It doesn't affect your credit score, doesn't hurt anything. It just means that you can know, when it's frozen, you or nobody else can get a new credit card in your name or any other form of credit. So since you're in control of it, you can unfreeze it and go get a new credit card or go apply for a loan or any of that. But if it's frozen, you can't do that, and nobody else can do that. And so it's free. And so so you got the 3 credit bureaus. So you put freezes there. They'll have a PIN number to freeze and unfreeze it. I'll talk in a minute about a password manager, but all these things that protect you, passwords and PIN numbers and so on, you should keep them in a safe place. So again, this is a great thing to do. And we'll talk at the end, but there are places to get help if something bad does happen. But freezing that credit and can really help mitigate anything that might accidentally happen.
Would be a time.
When you get home? No, I mean, it's something you probably just ought to do. So you should work it out, especially I look around the room and probably most of you are not getting new credit cards all the time and so on. So definitely you want to just freeze your credit because it's not something you're going to go out and get new credit for probably ever, maybe ever. And so if you ever do need to get credit, go out and get, you're going to go out and, buy a house full of furniture, you're going to finance it, or you're going to buy a new car and you're going to finance it, then you go and freeze your credit, finance your car, freeze your credit, and move forward. Yeah.
You have to contact those 3 bureaus, or is there?
Yeah, those 3 bureaus, and they're online. It's free.
You have to make 3 different ones. There's not one location you go to freeze your credit.
Um,
Go to Equifax, so send it to.
I think they might automatically send it. If you go on the handout, there's the Federal Trade Commission site has a lot of great details on how to freeze your credit.
Website at the very bottom, identity theft, that's only.
That's if you think something's happened to you. So the Federal Trade Commission, which is the one that the government entity that oversees all of this, they're the ones that have the details on how to do that. So like I said, it's very straightforward. And like I said, especially if you're in the stage of your life where you're not typically going out and getting, new credit, new loans, new credit cards, et cetera, then yeah, it's something you put in place. Um, um, so, wireless. We're talking about wireless in a couple different contexts. You may or may not have wireless at home. Today, if you have wireless at home, you probably have, you have some sort of a password to get on your wireless. You only had to do it once because your computer remembers it. And as long as you have a password, life's good. Life's good at home. If you have, I got things at the bottom. If you have a lot of guests who are wanting to use your wireless internet, like grandkids and et cetera, and just a good safety practice, almost all of your Wi-Fi devices have a quote, what they call a guest network. You give them access to the guest network. Now, the interesting thing about the guest network, the reason it's there is the guest network just lets them get to the internet. It does not let them get to your fridge or your Roomba or your 14 other things that are controlled by the internet, although you may not have all those things, but nor does it let to the computer that's your computer that's on your network or anything else on your network. So it builds a separate network for guests. And so that's something we tell people to do. Then when you go out and about in the world, there's wireless everywhere. It's wireless here. There's also, shared or public computers. Basically, if you're using a public computer or you're on a public Wi-Fi where it doesn't ask for any username or password, don't do anything that where you have to enter anything as far as login information, bank information. Don't do your banking on a system that is open. It says if you must, I would just say don't. If any way you can, don't. Public Wi-Fi's, you go to, here you're great. You use the public Wi-Fi, but I wouldn't sit here and be doing all my online banking at the public. No offense to the library, but at the library. Yeah.
Down, away. Is that safe?
Oh yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's a good point. Your cell phone and anything you're doing with your cell phone, that connection between your cell phone and the cell tower and back into the internet, that's all encrypted, and we don't consider that to be a really a threat vector. So doing things on your phone is fine. It's when you bring your laptop to the airport and you log into free Wi-Fi. Yeah, okay, that's fine if you're gonna just surf the internet a little bit. But again, that's not something you would use to do anything important. And that really gets down to that next thing about your phone. Some plans allow you to have your phone as a hotspot. When I travel and if I want to use my laptop at the airport, I take out my phone, I turn on the hotspot, and I pivot through my phone, perfectly secure. The traffic to my phone and my laptop is secure, and the connection from my phone into the internet is secure, and I know it's my phone. So that's a really, if you do a lot of traveling when you want to use your laptop and the phone, or in the airport. Most websites, pretty much any website that allows you to enter any type of information in it will have what they call HTTPS. That's a little padlock up in the corner. Look for the little padlock in the corner. But again, I would avoid in a public internet, entering your, anywhere where you're entering usernames and passwords. And again, today's phones, I know some people, people who almost never use a computer, the phone is everything, right? Does all their email, does everything. And that tends to be a safe way to do things. And it's sort of the same thing. We just talked about all that. So I've mentioned passwords a couple times. Passwords are those icky, awful things that we all hate, have too many of. Hopefully you have too many of. Hopefully you don't just have one. And that's not the best one. I didn't put up the list, but every year they publish a list of the top 20 bad passwords. And it's been fun watching that list over the last 15 years or so. Up at the top, it always is things like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And every year it just gets longer. So password's a great password. That always shows up in the list. And because that's what it says, enter password, right? So password. But when we think about passwords, they need to be, and they say, man, you need to be long, they need to be complex. And we'll get into a second of the downside of long and complex. But the reason we do that is for that data breach side of things. If somebody broke into company XYZ and stole the data and they get the password for everybody in this room, those passwords are actually encrypted in a kind of a special way. So what the attackers do is they take a dictionary and they try all these word combinations against those passwords to see if they get a match. And so if your password is password, that'll match in about, a fraction of a second. And so they very easily, if they can get the passwords, a password file, they might be able to get those simple passwords. So that's why we keep them long and complex. In essence, to keep people from, and sometimes people guess them. The famous thing, I don't know, it's been 15 years ago or so, 10 years, and I'm lousy with names, but one of the pop icons at the time who carried their dog in a bag all the time, her password was the name of the dog in the bag. And somebody got into one of her account, Facebook or one of her accounts, and because password was the dog's name. Okay, don't make password the dog's name. Then secret, we don't want to share passwords. And the third one is the one that's, everybody says they all should be different. No, I don't quite subscribe to that. If you had 4 passwords, you make them all different. I have probably 400 passwords. So I kind of put them in 3 buckets. I got a bucket of, if somebody were to get a hold of this stuff, my life would be miserable, right? It would cost me money. It would cost me time. I can't tolerate that. Those tend to be very unique, very long, special passwords. I have a middle bucket where, it'd be a kind of an awful day, but not an awful month or not an awful year. So I tend to have a group of passwords I use for those places. And then it's like, okay, this stupid site wants a username and a password so I can read an article. Fine. Okay, here's the default one I use for most of those, because fine. Now, having said all that, we're going to talk in a second about ways to manage all this. And that method will actually let you make them all unique. Before we get to that, the other horrible thing that everybody hates probably, right? Multi-factor, you go to your bank, type in your username, you type in your password, and then it says, I'm going to send you a text. Okay, where did I put my cell phone? Okay, yeah, right. Oh, yeah. Gwenay, can you call my cell phone so I can find it? And so But this is fairly secure. There's a new technology that's coming down the road. It's sort of coming down. It's somewhat here. That's more secure. But even though we hate this, last year, Iowa State went to a brand new system to do this last year, and I happen to chair the faculty IT committee on campus. And that was the number one complaint by faculty by far. Everything else, as far as IT was concerned, fell off their radar because they hated this new multi-factor. So in some sense, it was kind of cool because they didn't have anything else to complain about. They've since fixed a lot of the complaint. The big complaint was you couldn't even make your computer remember who you were on campus for very long. And so you were always entering it. But this is a thing that we need to deal with, and it's a good thing. It is really trying to help protect you. So this leads me to a way to help manage all this, and these are what we refer to as password keepers. There's a bunch of them out there. They all pretty much are the same. And most of them charge. So the downside is this is a reoccurring cost, monthly or yearly. But the beauty of these, there's a couple reasons why I advocate that people do this. First of all, it integrates with your browsers and your phone and integrates across devices. So I happen to use 1Password. That's the one I use. On my phone, it's a thumbprint. I go to a website and it wants my username, password, and so on, and I click on let 1Password do it, and I give the phone my thumbprint. It enters all that into the website, and away it goes. I have no idea what the password was because I don't need to know. Good question. And you notice I didn't have anything up there about that. That's actually something that the federal government about 2 years ago came out and said, don't. There's no point in if you have a really good password, unless it's compromised, there's no point in changing it. Because what they found is that by people who change it get into fatigue of, they make them simpler and they're okay. If I have to change it every 6 months, it's going to be, my dog 1. And next time it's going to be my dog 2 and my dog 3. So it really didn't, just the way humans deal with that sort of annoyance, it turned out that it really didn't add that much security. So the government's backed off from that. You'll still run into websites that force you to change it. But the general consensus is get a good one and stick with it. So anyway, something like 1Password, you can get family versions, so you can share. Each have your private locker, you have a shared locker. And the other thing I mention these for is, something like 1Password. First of all, they tell you, if you lose your master password, too bad. Because 1Password has no ability to open up your password file. They can never read your data. So on the flip side of that, when you sign up, the thing was about 30 digits long, a code, a special code. And they tell you to put this special code in your fire safe, put it in your safety deposit box, put it wherever, because that will always unlock it. And when we talk about somebody passing away, your family has access to your passwords and to your accounts. Now, it's amazing how quickly banks freeze accounts when somebody passes away. I think they almost anticipate somebody passing away. But you can get into accounts, especially things like, you may want to get into Facebook and other sorts of accounts. And having to have dealt with this with my sister years ago, and there's accounts we've never been able to get into. So this really is a great way to keep all this in one place. And as I said, let, as next generation or whoever, or your spouse, really get back into things. And somebody like your spouse probably knows what your main password is anyway. But in the case of somebody who doesn't have any idea, this would be something, as I said, you could put in a safe place. And it also, oh yeah, it can generate passwords for you too. And it generates it shows you what it's generating. It looks like a cat ran across the keyboard 14 times. It's just absolute random garbage. And since it remembers it, it can be absolutely random garbage. So something that's coming down the road, and I'll admit, I have not jumped on this bandwagon quite yet. And you may have seen this. Microsoft loves to come up and say, do you want to do passkeys? The idea behind a passkey is to get rid of the password. And I'm not going to get into how it actually does that, but it uses various encryption algorithms and signatures and all sorts of really techie stuff. But the big issue with it is on your end, you really need a password manager. Now, Google, Microsoft, and Apple want to be that password manager. That's why I've yet to jump into it, because I don't when Google says you want to remember my password, I tell Google, I don't even want to remember where I'm at right now, let alone my password. Google knows, if I yell Google too many times, my phone's going to wake up. So that's why I haven't quite played with it yet, because I'm trying to figure out how to let one password be that manager. There's authenticator apps. So I still haven't figured out the back end of all this, of how to make sure that it always works when I want to use it. But that's where the world is moving to. And there they move to, especially really designed well for your phone. The computer is the one I have a little less trying to figure out how to do, because all your phones today, right? Biometrics, your face, your fingerprint. And so that's what it uses as that way to turn itself on. And some of your apps will do that automatically. I don't know how many of you have apps, but you can turn on biometric authentication for the app. I do that because it's secure and it's easy, right? I just put my thumb on my phone and I'm into the app. This is something that we kind of want to, at least for me, I'm kind of keeping my eye on, is to when to make that transition. But multi-factor works well. This is just the next step up, because they do have some tricks up their sleeve. I don't really have a slide on it, but I'll mention it when I just thought of it. If you ever get a random code that says, here's your code, ignore it. What they're doing is that they have a link and they want you to enter that link, and then you re-interact with them, and it's a way for them to try to steal that second factor. And most places where you get that second factor will have as in the message, right? It says, here's your number, 6 digits, sometimes longer. And then at the bottom, they'll say, by the way, we will never send this to you unless you ask for it, and never share this. So again, read what the computer or the message is trying to tell you. But some adversaries have been doing some tricks around that, which is why they've trying to push to this passkey idea. So it's cat and mouse, and every time we fix something, they figure out, oh, okay, fine, I'm going to do something else. They don't go away and say, oh man, I can't make any more money. No, that's not. There's too much money involved for them to just give up. Some other backup. Removable storage or the cloud. Phones, man, the cloud's easy, right? You just, you pay a certain amount of money every month and all your pictures and everything goes up to the magic cloud. And there they are. And the beauty of the cloud is that you also then can get at all your pictures on another device. So you can go to your PC and grab all the pictures that are on your phone because they're up in the cloud. Removable storage, we don't see that as much. I personally do that for my work laptop as an extra backup, but that's just because of the nature of what I do and what I want to protect. But pretty much everything else is cloud backed up. Updates should be turned on. They are turned on. They're there for a reason. So if they're not turned on, or if you sit there and say, I don't want that update, I don't want that update, then don't do that. They, especially when you're talking about Windows, or your Mac OS, your Windows OS, your Android, your iPhone OS, when they want to update, you want them to update. Because typically they're doing this because they're fixing some security thing. They're not doing it because they have nothing better to do with their time, because updates are expensive for them. So do updates. So those are the kind of the, I would say technical things, but those are the things that we allow. Technology helps us fix. So now I want to move into the lies part, because this is where they've migrated to. Right? I already said, well, email and viruses don't work anymore. We put in MFA, so it's a little harder to deal with us, dealing with, even if I stole your password from company X, Y, and Z, I can't use it. Well, I still want into your account. I still want your money. How about if I just ask you to give it to me? Well, it's a whole lot easier than trying to do anything else. Is just convince you to give me the money. And so that's what a lot of these are around, is just convincing you to hand over the money. And I'm going to, social engineering is one of the things we talk about. I'm going to go through a lot of these in more detail. But before I do that, I'm going to talk about the mitigation for most of this, before we go into what it is. This is what you're all doing. You need to learn about security, learn about how it applies to what you're doing, and take those actions. And so it's really about trying to make people more literate around security. We have, since I'm up here, I get to get on soapboxes now and then. We see various marketing campaigns out there around cybersecurity by our vendors. Their biggest thing is they focus on fear, right? They show really cool computer-generated scary things coming out of the data centers and chasing you around the room, and so they play off of fear. They play off of an implied inability for you as a user to take security in your own hands. So they're not calling you dumb, but they're not calling you smart. And so I've made arguments and actually written some articles about the fact that, to me, the vendors are doing more harm than good to the general population. That it really is all about empowering the people to take security in their own hands. Because it's your money, it's you they're after, and so helping people understand their role, that it's not just technology. You can't just rely on the technology to protect you. And so trying to understand what's going on is that powerful step. CISA, which is they're out of Homeland Security, federal. They're charged with securing basically the critical infrastructures of the United States. They're the ones that help keep the lights on, the water running, and all those other things that our adversaries are so anxious to make not work. But they have a public campaign called Secure Our World, which is about security. They I occasionally hear a short little song from them on the radio. I'll talk a little bit about the kind of things we're doing along that same path, but it really is just making security part of everyday conversation. So we're going to go into the probably the top dozen FBI scam. The FBI is identified as the top dozen scams. Before I want to do that, I want to talk a little bit about the new scary thing that's out there. And that's AI. AI is a wonderful tool. I use AI daily. I've named it Athena because it's easier to say than ChatGPT. So, and that's kind of the running joke. I say, well, I'm going to consult Athena, and everybody around me knows what I'm talking about. And so, but it generates beautiful content, custom content. It can clone voices. We'll talk a little bit about that later. And it's getting better at video cloning. 5 seconds of somebody's voice is all it takes to replicate it. We used to talk about spam email. You could recognize it because it was broken English. Misspelled word. No, AI doesn't. No, there's no broken English. There's no misspelled words. Not only that, and this really plays out. We don't see this as much against people quite yet, but we see this against businesses. I can tell AI to point to this business's website, and I can ask AI to generate me information on the CEO. And now you can't quite say I want to craft a letter to trick the CEO, but you can say, I would like to have a letter to sell my product to this company based on the CEO, et cetera. And that's to start a business email compromise. And it will generate everything. It will go out and craft a beautiful letter. It'll pull out information about the CEO, whatever it can find, and put it all together. And it took the adversary 1 minute to do that. And the adversary English doesn't even have to be the first language of the adversary to be able to pull off a stunt like that. So we're seeing a lot of very well written material coming out of AI. Again, I get ahead of myself, but if you get enough data, enough information on how somebody writes, you can mimic. I could give AI, and actually students do this sometimes to get around AI detection. If you hand it enough of your work, you can say, please write an article in the style attached about this. And it will take your writing style and create an article. It's pretty cool. So it's able to let people create very good content. And you can automate a lot of this. So adversaries are using AI. Now defenders are using AI also. So AI is used to detect AI, and AI is used to detect attacks and so on. So we really are both using this tool. But we're now seeing more of an increase. When it first hit, when ChatGPT first came out, we expected a sudden spike in phishing emails and so on. We didn't see that, but we have now seen a more steady increase. They're trying to use it for some more sophisticated things than simple phishing emails. So I'm going to kind of quickly go through 12 of the FBI's top scam types, and just kind of a real quick description of them. They talk about phishing and spoofing just in a general category. So this is when it's not any of the other ones. It's just a general, hey, I'm trying to get your username and your password, or I'm trying to just simply get some money. And no, as we'll see, the other ones are very, very specific as to their techniques. So this is a general technique. This is the number one by complaints, but very low in dollar. So it doesn't pay off very well because we've kind of all gotten to the point of, oh, okay, fine. I won the Nigerian lottery for the 14th time this month. I don't, I'm done playing the Nigerian lottery. And so that's not very effective, but it is the thing we see a lot. Extortion. We see there's a set of emails that run around trying to extort money, claiming they have some information on you that they're going to turn over, that they're going to report, they're going to make public, and we'll make it go away if you give us X number of dollars in Bitcoin. That, first of all, is number one. There's three big payment indicators of why of you should never do. Bitcoin is one. Now they like Bitcoin because Bitcoin's is fairly anonymous. It's kind of interesting, a little tangent. I mentioned ransomware not being that, not that profitable. So the big ransomware cases where they've gone after, millions and millions of dollars against organizations, FBI's track record on recovery is 70% of the money. So they have a fair chance of losing the money that they stole, the adversaries. Now when they go after, $1,000 of Bitcoin, it's a little harder to trace. The more money there is, it's a little easier to potentially back that back out if they can figure out where it moves. But they have a fairly decent rate. And the funny story, how many of you remember when the gas pipeline was shut down on the East Coast? The company paid $5 million in Bitcoin. FBI got all the Bitcoin back, but the company unfortunately lost money because the value of Bitcoin went down. They could have just as easily made money had the value of Bitcoin gone up, but the value of Bitcoin went down. So again, these I don't see a lot, but you still see them. This is the investment fraud's the biggest one as far as dollars are concerned. $6.5 billion last year. That's what was reported. That's a lot of money. Fake crypto platforms are probably the biggest piece of that. Please invest money. It's there's sort of an electronic Ponzi scheme, only not quite as deep as a normal Ponzi scheme that plays out over a long period of time. This is a much quicker turnaround, plays off of people's desire to make a lot of money. And of course, they like crypto because, Bitcoin is just, astronomical. I don't know what the price of Bitcoin is nowadays, but it's $100,000 a Bitcoin or more than that. And we won't even get into the fact that is all just pretend money. But they capitalize off of that and get people to invest in a fraudulent. That was pretty straightforward. You're just playing off somebody's greed. I already mentioned this one, business email compromise. This is the big one against businesses, convincing them to transfer money. That's what they love in the business world. They'll interject themselves into some sort of transaction. They'll try to prove they're trusted vendor, or they'll pretend to be a trusted vendor and convince the organization to reroute banking. Happens more than people think it happens. But getting hold of company X and saying, hey, I'm with Acme Tools, and we've changed banks, and so I need to have you change the bank routing numbers. Here they are. And somebody enters the new bank routing numbers. And lo and behold, the next time they pay Acme Tool, no, they pay hacker number one somewhere. And so that's a real common. And by learning more about the business and who they do business with and that interactions, they get better and better at it and can move more and more money. So that's why that's up at 2.7. It gets number 2 on the hit parade. My favorite one, tech support scams. Call up and say, I said, hey, I'm from Microsoft. We've detected the fact that your computer has a virus and we're here to help. Well, first of all, Microsoft helped me. That's anyway, sorry. So they're very good. Kind of a side story. When I used to get several of these, and I lamented the fact that I never got one of those calls, and I was disappointed. So she got one and handed me her phone, and so I sat there and played like a real idiot. And this guy walked me through fixing my computer, and it was beautiful. He didn't have me do anything with the mouse. Everything's with the keyboard. The window key and the command prompt and typing in weird commands. I knew what they all meant, but they looked really secret and special. And they brought up a standard Microsoft program that none of us ever see. Microsoft, all computers monitor everything that happens. They're events, right? You do something and it's called an event. And they do that primarily for if something really bad crashes, they can go back and see what might have happened. So he brings up this thing called Event Viewer, and it shows 25,000 events. And he said, tell me what the number is. And I said, that's 25,000. He said, wow. He said, that you have had 25,000 attacks against your computer. Oh man, really? And so we played this game for a while until the point where he asked me to go to a legitimate website and download this piece of software, which is legitimate software, that allows a remote party control of your computer. That software is used often I have friends who are tech support for their parents remotely. And they'll use this software to remotely support their parents. So when we reached that point of downloading this piece of software, that's when I called timeout sort of and thanked him. I think I wasted a good 15 minutes of his day. Thanked him for this. All the time I was doing screenshots. So I thanked him. I said, I teach cybersecurity. I said, you've given me a great set of slides I can use. And he got pissed. He was mad. So anyway, that was fun. I don't encourage you to play with these people, but sometimes I get bored. But the beauty of this one, now what he was trying to, what they would have done is taken over my computer and done a few things, probably cleared out the event viewer and say, I've fixed it. I need $300, some number like that. And the beauty of this one and why this one is probably heavily underreported is for some people, they would look at that, they paid their $300, their computer is fixed in their mind, right? And it works. So they're happy. They're thrilled that $300 got rid of all those viruses on their computer that didn't really exist and walk away. So there's not even something to report because they think this is cool. Wow, Microsoft came and they helped me. Man, they're the best company on the planet. So that one I'm sure is heavily underreported. We see a lot around IRS, Social Security, law enforcement, demand money, right? They'll demand immediate payment because you missed jury duty and I'm going to come and arrest you unless you pay me a Target gift card. Really? you know, how about the pillow I bought last night from Target? You want that? You know, and so again, that's looking back at, you know, they'll never contact you these ways. You know, IRS, they pretend to be the IRS demanding money. One of the things they've also shifted to, so I've talked about Bitcoin is a big red flag. Any form of gift cards as payment is a bad thing. One of the things that has gone on or is going on, and many of the stores have educated their employees to question when somebody walks up, especially people of a certain age demographic, with $500 of Target, Walmart, name your favorite place, gift cards. They've learned to try to question. Now you run a fine line of, you know, because sometimes these people they've been pressured into a situation that they believe is urgent. But in some case, you know, there've been times in which they managed to have a conversation with them. The third cool thing that's out there now that is even more interesting, I think, and shows their willingness to how far they're going to go. And I didn't realize this till about a year ago. You can buy gold bars at Costco. You can buy an ounce of gold at Costco at current market value for whatever gold. So the price of it's whatever today's market value of gold is. So they will tell them to go to Costco and buy 2 ounces of gold, 4 ounces of gold, whatever, and deliver it to this address. So in somebody's mind, they're going, well, I'm handing it off to a real person. So this has to be real. This can't be a scam because it's not electronic. I'm not giving a gift card. So they then hire these mules, these people, to take that gold, convert the gold back into money, and they get a cut. So there are people out there who just go out and collect gold bars from people and cash them back in and get a cut for it. So that's the level of what our adversary wants to go through. Identity theft, kind of low on the dollar amount. Again, we're getting better at this, and then things with credit like credit lock, and so on make it harder for identity theft to work. We got confidence romance, building that long-term virtual relationship with somebody, and it escalates into money. I need money to do the, you know, some crisis come up. Can you send me, you know? And they always start out with small amounts, and then it just gradually increases over time. So, you know, 670 million. That's a pretty big chunk. Employment scams. We see this one. This one plays out a lot more with the younger generations. Earn $400 a month working from home.
It happened with us too.
Oh, it does. Okay.
I get them text message a lot.
Okay.
They offer me a job and I think, oh yeah, they really want me
Yeah.
to come work, but.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And what?
I mean, it's got to be the same thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's the same thing. Yes. And they.
It just said, could may I run something by you?
Yeah. And yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, what is it?
Yeah. I run something by you. Can we meet up? Hey, you know, this is Mary. Can I? Yeah. And those short ones are, as you said, you look at them and you think, well, that's, you know, it's either a mistake. So I want to write back and say, no, I'm not Mary. I think that's right. Yes, they do. They play on loneliness. They want that, you know, and they want you to interact. So those simple messages, they want you to answer that first one back. You know, I had this, you know, I got one a couple years ago from an email address that claimed to be my department chair. And it just says something like, can you help me out or something? And A, he never talks that way. B, it wasn't his email. But again, this was somebody I played with for a few minutes. And then finally just said, you know, because he said, they came back and said they wanted something more. And then I said, well, I thought you were at a conference overseas. And then it went away because I was tired of playing with it. So again, I don't encourage you to play with it. But yes, because we've sort of been educated to think about these long, complicated emails and these in-depth scams that are one and done, right? If you're trying to convince somebody to hand over money with only one message, you're going to write a lot more than, hey, are you there? Or, hey, can you help? But if you're willing to interact with you and have a dialogue, then they can move forward whatever their goal is. And the job scam, their goal often is, oh, great, you want a job? Well, we have a processing fee, $500, and you're gonna get this job or whatever it is. And so they grab that money from you, and then it vaporizes. So yeah, they're very, very creative, and as I said, very willing to interact with you, which takes time and energy on their part, but they see that payoff of.
Very easy thing where you can say, delete it and report it.
Yep. Yes. So yeah, definitely use that. Delete and report as spam. You won't get it again. Now they move numbers all the time, so you won't get one from that number ever again, probably anyway. But definitely, because that builds up all your phone carriers keep that that database of what they consider are spam. So the Verizons and the AT&Ts and so on, that goes back and feeds their internal work, so they can maybe filter these things before they go to anybody. So by doing that, you potentially help somebody else. But yeah, they're good. Real estate, again, it's all about that upfront money. And this is something we people talk about all the time with contractors coming in person or any of that. People asking for upfront money. Yeah, that's probably not something you do unless, again, there's somebody you really know. You go down the street to one of our long-established contractors here in town, or one of our long-established yard people, whoever, and they say, well, okay, here's what it's going to cost to do your project. We need 20% down. But you know who they are. You went to them. Okay, that's how they do business. But somebody knocks on your door and says, I want to do this for you, or knocks on your electronic door and says, I want to do this for you. I need money up front. Nah, no. That a lot of times ends very badly. Lottery, sweepstakes, inheritance. Again, back to paying that fee. Or they'll want information about it. They'll want I need your bank account. And that also plays into the overpayment one, relatively low. But again, they're claiming they've overpaid you, and they need to reverse the funds. They need access to your bank account to reverse the funds. Never give anybody, especially over the phone, access to your bank account. But again, this one's kind of a low one. But we've seen this one. I've seen this one come up a lot, some. So. This is one that is one of the disturbing ones, and they're very good again with the AI of regenerating voice, and so you'll get a call claiming to be from the police, from somebody who has. Usually they claim to be the police a lot of times. They've arrested and name a relative. Usually it's a grandchild. And they need money from you to fix this. Or your grandson has done something and I need money to fix this. And they'll play the voice. I'm holding your grandkid hostage, and here, help, grandma, and play their voice. So this is out there. It's not really, really prevalent, but it is out there. Couple things that you could do depending on your level of comfort, et cetera. we talk about having a safe word. So that's a word that basically you've all agreed upon, that if somebody really is in trouble, they say the safe word and you know it's them. Other one is hang up, right? If it claims to be them. But that the whole, again, this is this idea of if they demand it immediately and they're trying to create a sense of absolute urgency, the world's going to come to an end, something's really, really bad is going to happen. That's when you take that deep breath, slow down, and really think about what's happening. And again, that unusual payment methods. The police are not going to take cryptocurrency to get somebody out of jail. That is not going to happen, and not going to happen over the phone. And so again, the whole one-time codes, banking information, you just don't share that stuff. If they want payment in this weird way, then that's a red flag. The government does not take cryptocurrency to pay off tax debts. They don't take Target gift cards. They don't take gold, nor do they call you on the phone to deal with a tax debt. It comes via letter. Where are we at? Oh, QR codes. They're everywhere. When you see them in presentations, when you see them from a trusted source, okay, because they're a great way when you're giving a presentation to say, scan this QR code. That's going to be safe. But we have people that are going to restaurants and sticking their own QR codes over the ones on the restaurant tables. They'll stick them on walls, wanting you to scan them. And oftentimes that will take you to some place that may download some malware. Or it will try to get login information. So if you find them potentially on parking meters, then they may try to get your login information. So for those of you who use Park Mobile, right? You park up here. Did anybody use Park Mobile when you parked up here? Or did you throw the little round silver things in it, or did you just ignore it and not pay it? Those are three options. I use Park Mobile all the time. Use it all over the place. Never ever scan the QR code. Park Mobile, you bring up the app. There's that typically a 4-digit identifier. If it's a big city, it may be bigger. And you type that number in. So again, there's places. I'm not saying QR codes are bad, but again, you got to trust the source of where the QR code comes from. A random QR code laying around on the street, probably not something to scan. Oh, and a little bit about genealogy, right? We got to start and end with it. And there's better sources about this probably than me. My knowledge of genealogy is small and is only what is transferred from Gwinnett. But again, it's all about potential privacy. Okay, we're going to kind of wrap up here. Some things to do if you're targeted, and we've talked about these several times. Don't act on the spur of the moment. If you get a message that says, I'm from the bank. We think there's been a problem. We think something's wrong. Click this link to log into your account. Just go log into your account. Just go back up to the browser and type, www.thisismybank.com and log in. Or call them. So don't typically trust that. Most banks, when they deal with the fraud and those things, they'll do that via call, or they'll do it through their app, and the app is verified because you have to authenticate to the app. If you've already sent money, then credit cards you can often back that out of. Gift cards, not so much. Crypto, so some of those things are very difficult to back that payment out. If you paid, then you want to definitely change the passwords on those accounts. And then, of course, we've already talked about the credit freeze you should be doing. If you think something really bad has happened, ic3.gov or identitytheft.gov, one's for fraud, one's for ID theft. Not only is that a place to report, that is a place full of just an unbelievably large amount of information as how to deal with it. So I'm not going to go into much detail because they are the definitive answer on how to deal with something bad. And they're the people that can help. And basically do the things we talked about. Monitor your statements, view your accounts, run updates. There's a lot of simple things that we talked about today you can do just to make yourself safer. I'm not going to stand up here and say that there's a way to make yourself 100% safe well, there is. You can just not be on the internet anywhere and not do anything digitally. And I won't even say hide your money in the mattress because that won't work either. But there's a lot of things you can do to make things easier and better, harder for them. That's what we're trying to do, is make it harder for them. So we think about, we think about them, their only real cost and their only real impediment to making lots of money is time. So if it takes too much time and effort for them to deal with you, they will move on to somebody else. So that's the one weapon we have, is costing them time. Your password's too complex. You're not going to answer their emails. You're not going to interact with them. They're going to move on. It's not like they woke up one morning and said, I'm going to spend every waking moment trying to get your money. No, I'm going to try to get somebody's money, and whoever's the first person I can get the money from, that's who I get the money from. And we're going to close with a tree. I did a better job of that tree. It took me a long, I had to ask him multiple times to get this tree. We argued back and forth quite a while to get this tree. And kind of basic things we talked about, but in a pretty tree. So I want to close, although the QR code's covered, QR code. This is something that, I mentioned, CISA has some information. This is our information. They're little short videos, little short stories, all patterned after Schoolhouse Rock. So, and that link's also on the handout. So, for example, that's one of our videos. That was our last one we did that for Halloween last year. And we'll post it again coming up for this Halloween. But so leave time for questions, etc. But that's a few more of our videos. I think we have, I don't know, 50 videos, half a dozen characters. So some of you picked up Patty, the pig. So that's Patty, by the way. Patty's too smart to be spam. There's another pig called Kevin. Kevin is not too spam. Kevin's name is Kevin Bacon. Kevin is not too smart to be spam. Kevin ends up as Bacon in the song. Poor Kevin. We have a raccoon, we have a possum, we have a chameleon, we have a wolf, sheep. I don't know, a bunch of other, a shark and a jellyfish are new ones coming out tomorrow to talk all about. That one's focused on scam, so it's a scammer head shark. So there'll be a whole series, those dozen FBI things on that list. We're actually going to have a descriptive video, not a song, but a descriptive video of how each of those work and what you can do to protect yourself. So those are the kind of things that we've been making for people.
The slide about genealogy, just barely getting started.
Okay, and there's probably people in the room that can. Hopefully, I didn't put anything up there too wrong. Oh, genealogists in the room. Nancy, Gwinnett, did I say anything bad?
Here, I'll bring around the microphone if y'all have questions. We do have a question from one of our Zoom viewers, wondering if you just have a few words about end of service for Windows 10.
Yeah, let's make money. No, yeah, I mean, if your equipment can support moving forward, you really probably need to move forward. You have more time than Windows, I think, lets you believe you have time. Windows 10 was a relatively stable operating system. It was around for a long time. If you think of attacks against software, it kind of follows a curve of, at the beginning, bunch of attacks. And as time moves along and they fix them and they get better and they figure things out, the number of attacks against that software starts to approach zero. So Windows 10, I think, is down at that bottom. So it's not something you need to do right away, but I think it is something that I think you need to plan to move forward with. At some point, you may reach a situation where your applications will no longer work on Windows 10. That's really where you're going to run into the when you download your favorite application and says, sorry, I'm not compatible with Windows 10. That's when you definitely want to move forward.
Here, I'm sneaking up behind you.
Hey, I'll let you run the pick, people.
Recently in the news, there was a business website and it looked legit, but it wasn't legit. So how can you determine if a business website is legit?
So a little bit depends on how you get there. First of all, you look at its, at the URL at the top, is that correct? And is there a padlock? So the domain, the name of the website, iastate.edu, if that shows up as iastate.edu and there's a padlock next to it, that means that name matches and is valid. So as opposed to lastate.edu. So sometimes they trick you by the misspelling. The other way is, again, how you got there. If you type it in, you're going to get to the right site. If you click on a link, that's when you need to be suspicious of, did it potentially take me to the wrong place? And then you look at where it took you. Now, again, it's also, what is that site good for you, right? You really see that, as you said, with businesses where you have to enter usernames and passwords, where you have banks where you have to enter usernames and passwords and so on. That's when they're trying to drive you to that fake website because they want something from you. Driving you to a fake website that is showing just arbitrary stuff. That's not, they're not gaining anything by doing that. So where they gain is by getting you to log in, try to log in, and getting your username and password. Now, there's been some rare occasions where a legitimate website has been compromised, and that's a different problem. It's well out of our control. If somebody, not to pick on the Ames Library, we'll pick on the Ames Library. If somebody were to compromise the Ames Library website, I'm not sure you even have authentication on it, so maybe it won't matter. So probably wouldn't matter. But if you legitimately took over somebody's site, then that's a problem we can't fix. That's the same problem you'd have if they took it over and grabbed all the passwords. So I don't know if that quite answers your question, but it kind of. So that is a problem. When you do an arbitrary search, you're gonna again want to look at that URL, look at that. If you click on the padlock, it opens up information about the website that's managed by the creation of the padlock. So if you're questioning that, but you're right, there have been cases. A big one, I don't know if you see it much anymore, but for a while, if you search for Norton antivirus, the Norton software was not first on the list. It was somebody else who was not a good actor and would help you, quote, help you. And then they'd reach a point where they demand money out of you, even though you already paid Norton to do what they were doing. So there's a case where the search engine, they paid enough to get themselves at the top of the search engine.
Lower down.
Not necessarily. You really want to look at that name and the padlock, and because what the padlock says is that name, the name that you're seeing, corresponds to that physical website. Those match. So if it's US Bank and there's a padlock, that is US Bank's website. Now the problem is if you don't know Fred's Auto Body, what is their URL, then that's a much tougher problem because you don't know where the right place is when you just search for Fred's Auto Body. So that one's much tougher. If you're suspicious, or again, it's what do they ask you at the website? And if you're going to try to do business with them, then you want to, maybe do a little more research, especially if you're going to do a lot of, big business with them. But most of the time you end up, when you search for something, you'll end up with legitimate sites. Google's changed their algorithm and their funding algorithm such that it's more cost prohibitive for the adversary to play out that of taking over and becoming the top on the Google search engine, because Google's found out a way to make so much money by putting you on the top that they're not willing to do that.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I wonder about two things relating to banking online. The first is how to make a donation to an organization online. Is that a safe thing to do? It's almost like how some organizations, that's the only way you can give to them. So what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, if you want to get, again, that's going to the organization. So if you wanted to give money to the Ames Library, you would go to the Ames Library website directly and find their donation page and click through that. I don't know if it's handled directly, or they may redirect you to a third party. And you'll see a padlock. You'll enter your donation information. Yes, that type of thing is secure. Now, if you get an email that says, hey, how about giving me some money? Click on this link. I'm from the Ames Library. Then type in the Ames Library address and go to the Ames Library.
How does the do not call list actually do anything anymore?
No. No.
Other than collect money?
The do not call list doesn't really work because the people don't listen to it. The callers don't. They fake where they're calling from. No. I mean, yeah, it doesn't work like we want it to work because nobody's stood up and trying to enforce it to work. And then you also have adversaries that are not here. And so they can pretend to be, your caller ID number, the number shows up in your caller ID, that's provided by the caller. I could pick any phone number I want and call you and say I'm from that phone number. So the base caller ID system has never been enforced to be authenticated as to being who the actual caller is, which is why things like all this swatting that's going on with the schools and stuff, that's why that tends to work sometimes, because the people making the call may be 5,000 miles away, but they can pretend to be an Ames number.
I see.
And
Right. So what about when it comes up on my phone and says spam risk?
then I would listen to your phone. Again, it says that because other people have said that. So your carrier and your provider. So you got your Androids and your iPhones. So those two operating systems are collecting that. So Apple is collecting information. The Google Android people collect information. Plus your provider. So Verizon, AT&T, so on, also knows who have been reported as spam. And so when it says that, yeah, I trust my phone. When it rings and it's red and it says spam, it's like, yep, I trust you. Same with texts. My phone will throw texts in. You won't even see them because it throws them in a, so periodically I have to go into the spam folder because you never see the spam folder on your text messages, and go through and delete. And it's always, I look at them and it's like, yeah, you're right, you're right, you're right. So yeah, I would trust it to what it's saying. And on the phone side, I tend to not, you can decline, or in some cases you can block or filter. The filter block sends something back to them. If I'm not quite sure, I'll just let it ring through. If it's somebody important and it turns out to not be spam, they'll leave a voice message. If it's not that important, they won't leave a voice message. But yeah, I trust your phone.
I'm just getting started with genealogy things, helping my dad fill in some things on a site that's already partially filled in. And as I'm investigating it myself, I have questions like, I think it said that it doesn't show birth dates of living people or something. But when you get into your own little family tree, I think you can see that. Sometimes it's not the specific birth date, but it shows the year that the person, well, some of these they were deceased, but I'm just trying to figure out what's the safest way to proceed to help expand that. It seems like there's fun stuff. You can download pictures and things like that, but they upload, it's on familysearch.org. And it looks like other people get in, I think maybe from the Mormon church, that enter data, because I saw my cousin listed and I thought, yeah, but who are these other people? It's like somebody's username they might have on a social media or, something, but just, are there any kind of general cautions to using that kind of stuff? It seems like you can't really see a whole lot if you're not logged in with an account. So
And my genealogist in the room I'm not the genealogist.
The answer.
Search just has one tree.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
I think you're talking about I think you're talking about the tree function, and the tree is different than any other tree on the web. The tree is an open edit tree. So anyone can go in and add or subtract or change information on that tree, which is what you're seeing. It could happen. Other than that, what did I miss?
Item 5.
Item 5? Where's item 5? Oh, yes.
Control copy.
As a personal, we both use Family Search, but we also have a software database on our computer for our information, knowing that someone can come along and make changes to the Family Search tree. We use as our own personal, we have researched, know or believe our information to be correct. We want to keep that secure. So we do use our own. There's a lot of different software databases out there, some of which have a free component. And then there's also there's Google genealogy software. There's a plethora of them, and some of them work only with Windows. Some of them use other applications for viewing. So that would be my suggestion on that. We good?
There was also a question, what is the dark web?
Fun place. No. So yeah, that's kind of trying to think of always a good analogy for the dark web. The dark web is not, start with what it's not. It is not a separate network. It is, so, we would use Google or we would know, for example, to find the Ames Public Library. And it's publicly searchable and the Ames Public Library wants to be found. There are places on the internet that don't want to be found or can only be found if you have the right tool to find them, the way to get in to find them. So they live on the network, but they're not something that you readily can find unless you're part of that community, part of that group. And there's kind of a couple sides to the dark web. There's the sort of public facing dark web, which is pretty easy to run across. And it's, one would argue potentially it's not even really the dark web. It's just where bad things are, I can go to the dark web and I can buy credit cards, credit card numbers, ranging from about $1 to a few $100s per number. I can buy them for Ames, Iowa. So that's a pretty publicly facing part of the dark web. The true dark web is more like the old speakeasy type things. If A, I got to know where the speakeasy is. B, I got to know what the secret password is on the door that I can't even find in order to get in. And that's where the really, really bad side of the internet plays out. That's where you buy things that and trade in things that nobody should be buying and trading in. They're very controlled who they let in. It's almost like a mafia, a criminal organization as to who gets in. You need to know somebody, which is why it's kind of hard for you look at the good people, the FBI and others, they spend a lot of human capital to try to infiltrate. It's just like trying to infiltrate, as you see in the movies, trying to infiltrate the mafia or whatever. You got to build relations, you got to build trust, and that's all done human to human before they let you into that piece. But it's still kind of on the, still all connected with the same wires we're all connected with. It's just something we don't know where it is, therefore we don't know how to get into it.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.